Today I am travelling to Parkhouse, Monmouthshire, which is a small hamlet situated between the villages of Tinton, Catbrook and Trellick's Grange. I have been invited to meet and interview a local resident who vividly remembers the Second World War starting and how a Nazi aircraft dropped an anti-personnel bomb next to her cottage on the 10th of August 1940. This peaceful country scene today shows Trellick's Grange on the far horizon, and during the early hours of the 10th of August, a German aircraft flew from there directly across this green valley and towards the camera, and dropped a stick of bombs between her cottage at Parkhouse and Trellick's Grange. Luckily, the only casualties were sheep, but considerable damage was caused to her cottage.
In 1939 you were staying with friends in Swansea.
In the summer holidays.
Right. And then you hear the war had been declared.
And while I was down there on the Sunday morning, we didn't go to church that morning because we were told that the Prime Minister was going to make an announcement on the radio.
Quite dramatic then, really.
Yes. So we gathered round the radio. Right. And that's when we heard that Britain was at war with Germany.
And how did you feel about that? Were you frightened? Were you?
My feeling, I loved Penllygate area where I had grown up and enjoyed. And my very first thoughts were, am I going to be able to get home?
Right.
Which was just up to Monmouth.
Right, okay. So did you get home?
Oh yes,
right.
In my normal time.
Right.
But it was cut short, the visit to Swansea, because I felt I had to get home quickly while I was able to.
So what were the first things you noticed was different about Wales when the war began? Do you remember things like rationing and?
Oh yes, yes. Oh, and it's still on, isn't it? Well, you see, I have some linen tea towels that were produced a bit later, with showing rationing and how things were being organised.
Right.
So one collected these because you knew they'd last a long time, even if you didn't manage to.
Right. So in the area of Monmouth and this area, what did you notice? Were things happening? Were the Home Guard quite active?
Oh yes.
Mm-hmm. So we had local defence volunteers that became the Home Guard.
Local defence, but Trellick, when I came back here, as young people in a country area, to begin with, perhaps we didn't notice as much, except that you behaved yourself, you really showed off a bit, because I can remember a whole group of my age going from a meeting at the church hall in Trellick down to the bottom of the village and back, doing the Palais glide because some soldiers had arrived and were billeted around and keeping guard in the field at the bottom of the village.
Or by Court Farm?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Right. And this was new to see soldiers in the village then?
Yes.
Right. And is it right that there was a searchlight up at Bullock Hill area?
Oh, very much so, yes. Right. And where we were living at that time was at the top of Bullock's Hill, at Cicely Ford, was where we as a family lived, the whole of the top of the hill.
Right.
And therefore, the first lot of soldiers that were living anywhere locally was on the top of the rocks.
Right. Oh, the rock. Right. Did they have an anti-aircraft gun there as well?
Now, I'm not quite sure,
Right.
but they had a searchlight
Right. Okay.
up there, and therefore they may have had. I'll have to look back at those.
So, if we move forward now to August 1940, you went through a rather frightening and possibly exciting and traumatic time. When what happened? Do you want to tell us what happened in August 1940 when you were asleep in this house?
Oh, yes. The war had been going on very much in Europe, with a lot of our young men over there and fighting. And we had the episode at Dunkirk.
Now you remember Dunkirk quite well then?
Oh yes, well you didn't know much about it except what you were told, and how all the soldiers most of the soldiers managed to get back to where you were.
Right.
Round and about. But
So from what I understand, you were asleep in bed in this house.
oh yes.
And what date was that? I bet that date is... I'll look it up for you.
You bet. I had a feeling it could be a Friday night. Or see, I forgot.
Well, all it says in your bed is one Friday night in August 1940 you went to bed.
Ah, oh well then.
That's all it says.
Oh,
It'll be... I know it'll be. Hold on. I'll have it here. It'll be in the report from the...
oh yes.
Here we are. I'll look that up. I'll remind you. I'll prompt you with that. Okay, so...
Oh, that's right.
17th of August 1940. Right, so on the 17th of August 1940, you were asleep in this house, in bed, fast asleep as a young girl.
Yes.
Do you want to tell me what happened?
We had for some days had airplanes coming not around our area particularly, but through or going from somewhere to somewhere.
So you could hear these aircraft?
I mean, you could hear these occasionally.
Did you know what they were?
Well, you knew they were your country's
Right, okay, from the engines
on the home.
Right.
And I went to bed in the normal course of events, my normal time, and the only thing I remember was being woken. I suppose it must have been just after midnight or something.
Right.
I can tell you when the bomb went 12 something. And my mother, oh no, because she was up. I can't remember the time. You see, all these things I've written down.
It was 12:30 a.m.
That's right. So, yes, and I'd been fast asleep in bed.
Right.
And my mother came and shook me awake and took me and made me come downstairs very quickly. And there was a lot of mess around and the windows were broken. I could see this as we came downstairs. And it was only when my father was had been out at various meetings, and so we were here on our own. And my mother had woken me because a bomb had dropped quite close to the house.
How close was it there? Do you remember?
It was 7 or 8 feet from the corner of the house, in the middle of our strawberry bed that we had then.
Right.
And all the windows were broken in the house, and there was a mess everywhere.
Right. Now,
I think I'm right in
there's a report in Gwent Archives
yes.
by the main control services at Newport were told by PC Morgan of Tinton,
Yes.
reporting a message at 0145 that 4 high explosive bombs were dropped altogether, 2 in the parish of Trellick and 2 in the parish of Trellick Grange. And damage was done to windows and ceilings and the roof of Gethley Farm, Trellick, property of a Mr. Robert Richards, who was your father.
Yes.
Right. And a cowshed at Llanynant Farm, Trellick Grange, was damaged by a direct hit.
Yes.
And one of your neighbours, Herbert Heath, who was farming just across the way, had 2 sheep as casualties.
Hubert Heath's farm.
So one of your neighbours across the way.
Yes, but the true farm, Herbert Heath's farm, had the direct hit on their barn in the group of buildings close to the Gethley.
Right.
And Hubert Heath, who lived in the Great House Farm, he was the one who had 2 sheep killed in his field, which was just beyond the Llanynant Farm.
So by the time daybreak came,
yes,
I can imagine you had lots of visitors here.
Yes. It's. I must.
You would have insurance assessors and.
On the Saturday, because that was the Friday, I think. On the Saturday afternoon, of course, all the local inhabitants had heard that bombs had fallen at Trellick Grange area.
Right.
And wanted to come and see where they were.
I could imagine so, yeah.
And on the afternoon of Saturday, I can remember Nancy Bull, who had been Nancy Heath, whose home was Llanynant Farm, the next one to the Gethley. She came up here, and when all the crowds of people came to see where the bombs had fallen, she and I sat in Llanynant Field under the hedge on the Llanynant side to get away from the people.
So how many people were you? Hundreds?
There were masses. I don't remember a number, but everyone local came to see where the bombs had fallen, because luckily for us, they were a stick of anti-personnel bombs, therefore smaller ones. And so we were indeed very, very fortunate.
Okay. Now, I believe you've got some bits and pieces I want to talk about.
That's oh yes.
There we are. You hold it like that. Okay.
That's it. Yes, that's a piece of shrapnel.
Now, if you hold it up quite high, Betty, that's it. That's it. No, just hold it up, look at me, and just hold it there. That's it. Now, that's a really vicious-looking piece of fragment of a bomb you've got there, isn't it?
It's very heavy, too.
Yes, and it's very sharp.
The edges are extremely sharp because it's iron. and I put a label on it because, of course, I wouldn't remember all this detail. Piece of bomb case from the bomb at the Gethley, August 1940. It's a very heavy piece of shrapnel and very sharp indeed.
It looks very wicked, doesn't it?
Yes, could do a lot of damage.
Yeah, you were very lucky then.
We were indeed extremely lucky. And the nose of the bomb is...
Yeah, I'll get that for you.
Yeah.
We're going to do some stills with that. Okay. So
Oh,
these-
yes.
Right. Okay, Betty. So you've got two pieces there. What are those then, Betty? What you're holding now?
These are the noses. That's the bit that hits the ground first. Where the bomb lands, that's the first bit of the bomb that would hit the ground. There's just slightly, one's had more knocked off it than the other. Very heavy indeed, and one dropped very close to the house, and we were extremely lucky indeed that it didn't go 6 foot further on and come onto the house itself and blow us away. And the other one fell in one of our fields over the wall from the house itself, from the Gethley itself. And when I say luckily, I've kept them. You could easily see where they'd fallen because you had the little crater.
So how big were the craters?
Oh, luckily they weren't very big because they were smaller bombs.
So how deep were the craters?
Oh, again, not extremely deep, but you could stand in them, and I suppose they'd be come up to above your knee,
Right.
or up to the top of your leg.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were really, really lucky that night.
We were extremely lucky. This was a stick of what they called anti-personnel bombs. They weren't the bombs that were sent down Poland and places like that to blow the place away.
Right. So they were just designed to kill people,
They were, yes,
and they only managed to kill sheep.
and 2 sheep that night.
Here is the nose cone from the German bomb, and again you can see it's a very heavy piece of steel, and it's clear that if this would have hit you again, it would have been fatal. Here is the other portion of the top of the bomb, and you can see this is even more jagged than the previous, and it's quite clear that any injury from these would have been fatal. Quite a nasty and thought-provoking piece of steel. When you look at this savage piece of steel, it brings home to you the absolute horror of war and the impact this piece of steel could have had on any family in Wales. Could have been just life-changing and traumatic beyond belief.
different kinds of aeroplanes around, and a lot of the young men particularly knew what type of aircraft it was flying over.
So
I could tell you.
Right,
but they were just aircraft
for you,
for people like me. And but we were interested in them. And I have a model here. It's a model of a Spitfire made out of a penny, one of our British pennies. And it was made by Billy Truman. The Truman family lived in Trellick. And he made this Spitfire model in 1941 out of a penny, because of course Spitfires, you had pictures and models, you could easily see what they looked like. And he made out of one of our coins a Spitfire, which he gave me.
So did he make that by hand, or did he have a machine to do it?
I don't know.
Right. Okay.
He could have had a machine of some sort, perhaps because if it's made out of a penny, he'd have had to have been able to cut into there. Therefore, there must have been something like that. And it was given to me by his sister, Greta Truman, who taught for a while in Trellick School.
If you hold that up for me. Right. So what you've got there looks a little bit like a toilet roll of paper, and in between the layers of paper is a strip of aluminium. So what can you tell me about that?
Silver paper.
Silver paper, yeah.
There were quite large, tight rolls. I have a bit somewhere. Of tissue paper and either side of strips of silver paper. The examples that I have are only pieces and therefore are not so easily, can't be so easily described, but aeroplanes of ours, presumably, when we flew over some of our enemy countries, we'd throw out of the planes a roll, quite a tight roll, of like a toilet roll, with tissue paper interspersed round silver paper strips. And this was thrown from the planes so that it would open up from the roll, and anyone on the ground seeing things come down would think that is metal and it could be dangerous. And we, I presume in this country only, I don't know, it was known as chaff, C-H-A-F-F. And it was to get the enemy to fire at this stuff that was coming down, which wouldn't have done any harm to anyone, because the people on the ground thought it was a danger and part of a bomb.
Right.
Or something. And so it was really just like a toilet roll, but the silver paper interspersed. I used to have one tight bit, but I don't know where it's gone. But I mean, how the manufacturers, the stuff that they were able to produce to make it look something dangerous was very interesting.
Well, yes, I mean, it was a period of trying to confuse and confound the enemy, wasn't it?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Was that to interfere with the radar?
Oh yes, because that would pick up the metal as going through the air.
Yeah,
Yes.
so the enemy radar stations would think that instead of 20 bombers, there were perhaps 200 coming.
Well, could well be, yes, something like that, yeah.
Okay,
But-
so what can you tell me about rationing, Betty, during the Second World War? Because you were heavily involved in domestic science as a teacher,
Yes.
as a student. So what can you tell me about making ends meet with rationing?
Well, it was good in many ways, and it meant that the whole population would be able to get food, and you wouldn't necessarily have one lot of the population having food and somebody else not so much, except in country areas where you had farms and things like that. Then, of course, it was easier, and it was easier if you grew things in your own garden.
So did you get lots of additional dietary additions, such as rabbits and hares and?
Oh, very much so in the country. Rabbits were very popular,
Right.
indeed. I love to stop for a moment because, I've got some new tea towels. They're folded. I ought to have brought them down at the beginning of this. Of the Russian things.
With the World War II ration per week.
Thing.
What you
Well, no,
allowed?
I forget exactly details on it, but they're upstairs on a thing, and the same with the ration book.
So every family had a ration book.
Oh, you had your individual
Well,
ration
each
book.
person had a ration book.
Oh, yeah, yes. I mean, you had them. I'm trying to think now. There were individual ration books because if you were a small child, you had certain things that you had available, and you had different quantities in. I think I'm a bit hazy.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So you take the ration book into Trellick stores, for instance.
Whatever you were buying,
Yeah.
you had to have your ration book, and if you'd run out of stuff, they wouldn't give you that particular food.
So what was your favourite dish during World War II that you could make then? Was it some sort of pie or a cake? Or did you not have that sort of stuff in World War II?
Oh, you had special times when you had cake, birthdays and things. You kept all that sort of thing going. I don't remember.
Okay.
I could easily look and see what I had written, and I certainly would like to go and get these examples.
That's good. Right, so you're holding up there a copy of a ration book, so you must have been quite familiar with those
Oh, very
documents,
much so. Yes.
and excellent stuff.
That was the ending.
And
50th anniversary.
so do you remember rationing ending in Wales?
I couldn't say yes clearly, but we knew that it was going to happen, but I have no real recollection
Okay. Right.
of it.
Excellent.
But I'm sure I will have written something down, because it varied quite a lot, even if your ration was a certain amount, whether it was sugar or anything else. Sometimes some areas didn't have enough for all the people or something. But I think it was bought after the war.
So what you have there, Betty, is a whole list of the years of the war.
Yes.
And with the various
What happened?
highly reported points of the war.
Yes.
That's quite an interesting...
It's a very interesting one. Oh,
Of course, it's a time that you lived through.
yes, and life was interesting, and you never knew what was going to come next. Therefore, you looked and collected. And this came after VE Day.
Excellent.
But they did produce a whole lot of things for people. I don't know, I mean, people must have saved I didn't use one, I mean, I didn't use it for washing up or anything, because I felt it told the history.
Excellent.
Because it gives the dates right through, from 1939, right through the various things.
What can you tell me about your brother and his adventures when he was in the war and he was hospitalised? He met...
Yes. I've forgotten where it was.
So your brother George was...
He was in the Royal Artillery, and he was out in Italy for quite some time, and in North Africa and Egypt. In fact, he was one of the ones who was on the group that went first into Italy to Anzio.
Yeah.
And
So your brother George was awarded a military cross for his service in World War II.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And that was at Anzio in Italy.
So at some point George was hospitalised and was in Egypt. And who did he meet in Egypt, and how did he meet them?
Oh, he was... I rather gather that, of course, any of our men who were wounded were looked after very well indeed when they were in hospital. And he had a rather nice experience where one of the nurses that was partly looking after him, when they were talking a short time later, and just talking about general things as to where they lived, etc. And it was very strange indeed that the one nurse had lived in Trellick and knew the area very well.
This was Sister Truman?
Yes, and it was Greta Truman was the one that we knew around here, who was mainly at home more, and she had two sisters who were nurses, who were nursing out in Egypt and Italy.
Right. So she nursed George Richards?
Yes.
And by coincidence they learned that they were both from Trellick?
Yes.
And that's almost 1,000,000 to 1 chance, but
yes.
The world is...
It was really rather lovely, you know. It's all those odd instances.
During the war, you have said that we were very well looked after.
Yes.
And that things were organised very well. So what sort of things were organised? Rationing was a big thing.
Yes, rationing was very good, and also the way in which people could get about to help each other, people who were in country areas. You had a lot happening. That brought you together, and you did amusing and interesting things. For instance, I remember a group of us in Trellick who'd gathered together, and I forget for what exact purpose it was, but I think it was to welcome some evacuees who were due to come. And a group of us who I suppose were 16, 17, that sort of age, we did the Palais Glide down the road from the church down to the bottom of the village and back. Right. So that must have had some music coming from somewhere.
So you finished your education at the girls' grammar school?
Girls' high school.
So you finished your education at the girls' high school?
Yes.
And then you went to study what?
I went to study home economics and textiles.
Right.
And that was part of the London University grouping. You had various groups in the country. And our group in particular were evacuated, of course, from London, and their place for working was Torquay. And therefore, we spent 3 years living and working and enjoying things at Torquay and the whole of the area around.
Mm-hmm. So you were in church one day when there'd been a bombing.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that at Torquay?
Yes, we used to automatically go to our hostel was up at on the St Mary Church Babbacombe Road opposite the top of the Cliff Railway, and therefore we went to St Mary Church on a Sunday. And one Sunday morning at an odd time in the service, the vicar suddenly went up into the pulpit. Yes, I think. And now people began wondering what was happening, and he announced an important thing and said if there's any doctor in the congregation, would he please go immediately to the Palace Hotel.
And what had happened?
And there was a bit of movement, and then we got on with the service. And what we found afterwards was that while we were in church that Sunday morning, the Germans had sent over some bombers and had bombed the Palace Hotel. And the Palace Hotel was the convalescent home for RAF who'd been wounded.
Right, so that was quite a tragic event.
It was very much so. A very, very great event for the whole area. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, in Torquay, you had an initial training wing base there, didn't you?
Yes.
So what did you see going on there with the RAF?
Well, in the very early days, the RAF, those who volunteered for our Air Force, they were accepted, and the first 12 weeks of their life in the RAF was at what was called an ITW, and that was the initial training wing, where they did the theory of flying, etc. And for 12 weeks they would gather together as a group, and after 12 weeks they were sent either to Canada, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and there was one other place I can't think of now, where they learnt to fly the planes. They'd only done the theory of flying in this country, and they did their flying training where it was safer to learn to.
Yeah, because during the Second World War, one of the Crumb brothers went to America to learn to fly and was killed in a dive bombing accident.
That's right.
Yeah. And his brother, another Crumb, was awarded the DFM for his services.
That's right.
So we had a lot of brave men in Trellick, didn't we?
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. Oh yes. Yeah. There were. Oh yes.
Now, you talk about the initial training wing.
Yes.
When these chaps had gone through their initial training and they were sent to all parts of the world, the RAF types used to call it LITW, Lost in the World.
Yes, I hadn't heard that. But yes, because they might be sent anywhere of the countries that were accepting them.
So when you were down in Torquay, you must have seen the Americans arrive.
Oh yes, very much so. And in fact, our hostel, which was on the Barbican Road and looking out to sea.
What was your hostel called?
Ferny Bank.
Ferny Bank.
Well, there were two houses there, Ferny Bank and Ferny Coombe. And ours was Ferny Bank. And they had students in both of them. They were in the same grounds. And there were houses behind us before the next road came. So we had the coast road, Ferny Bank, a very small area of both our back area and the back area of the hotel behind us. And the RAF had been in the hotel behind us, but then suddenly, when the RAF were disappearing from the area really, and suddenly in the room opposite the room that I lived in, suddenly appeared on the windowsill a big pair of boots, soles of a pair of boots on the windowsill. And that's all. And we couldn't find out anything to start with about who on earth had come to live next door, until suddenly we found the Americans had come to the area. And the first lot of Americans were sent to places around the coast. And we had a group that we got to know very well.
Right. And what did you do did you not make some boots?
Oh yes, we of course, trying to get to know people in a funny way, somebody drew a pair of soles, on a big sheet of paper and put it up in my window just to see what was going to happen. And that did certainly encourage the person who owned the boots, the other ones, to come and find out what was going on.
So there was quite a bit of humour in wartime then?
Oh, very much so.
Right.
Oh yes, there was actually. Well, you were all young together, and it was a dangerous time, and people looked after each other. It's I think.
Did you come across any German prisoners of war during the war?
No.
No, none of us were.
No.
There were none locally then in working in prison camps or anything? Probably not, no.
No. Well,
Okay,
I can't remember that side of it.
Now, your father, now, he was part of the proposed resistance groups in Wales, wasn't
Yes,
he?
yes.
Would you tell us a little bit about his time in the war? Because it was kept very, very secret.
Oh, yes, very much so.
But it was a secret army, really.
So yes, in a way, but and in country areas, you see, you were very well organised, both for meetings and getting about, and of course, in a farming area, you had a lot of people based here.
So who else in this area was involved in this so-called secret army then?
Well, I would say all the younger men who weren't in the forces. I don't know is the quick answer.
Okay.
Really. Because you might be called something or other that meant a group, so that the officials, I was going to say Whitehall, but it wouldn't necessarily be Whitehall, would be able to distinguish, and they weren't in the forces, but they were, when I say home guard, in its widest sense.
So they were designed to, if the Germans came, they would be putting forward a secret resistance to the Germans here.
Yes.
And
they had certain, and particularly in country areas where the people who lived there didn't really know where they were meeting or who would be involved necessarily. It was all a bit secret.
And of course, if the Germans had come, your father would have probably been executed had he been caught.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of them would, yes. And if you had lived in an area for a long time and know it well, you're better to organise everything because you know all sorts of the slags and things that could happen, all that sort. Yeah.
So, do you remember what happened to the road signs in Trellick area during the war?
Oh, there weren't any. You didn't.
Why were there no road signs?
Well, you didn't want people to know necessarily.
So it was to confuse the spies?
I don't know that exactly. One can only surmise, because
they were put back after the war.
Oh yes.
So it must have been to really confuse any invaders.
so that you'll be able to find your way around.
Now, there are many pictures of Trellick before the war where you see lots of iron railings.
Oh yes.
And they disappeared. What happened to them?
Well, they went to make munitions.
So they were all gone for scrap?
Well, gone, and Monmouth, all the railings round the Shire Hall, they all went quickly.
Really?
Oh yes, and there were, now I can't remember because there were two different versions. There were cannons in the archways of the Shire Hall, and they disappeared, and I think they had gone, to make munitions and all that sort of thing.
And that was quite common.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yes, a lot of scrap was recycled.
Oh yes. Oh gosh, yes. And any metal and things, yes.
So, during the Second World War, what was the medical service like locally? Who was the village doctor in Trellick in those days, you know? Because it was it was at the Pound, wasn't it? The Pound area was where the surgery was.
Oh, the surgery was one of those small areas where you had one car in each, and one of those was the surgery.
Right.
And it had 2 rooms. You sat and waited in the room nearest to the road, and there were two things to sit on either side, and you were lucky if you managed to get a seat. You might have to wait outside for your turn, and one door to go into the doctor straight from there. You could hear everything that was going on, really, because you had your own medical.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, Betty, so what you've got there, could you tell us about that? That looks to me like a piece of parachute from World War II. What can you tell us about that?
It is certainly a piece of silk, because of course the parachutes had to be very strong, and silk as a fabric, however thin and fine it was a very strong fabric, and they were well made. This is only a small part of a parachute, but you can see the shaping of the pieces of fabric that were joined together, so that the narrow bit of the fabric became wider and wider, so that they were, and this is only a small piece of it.
Excellent, okay.
Very strong, and of course the reason these pieces are about is, of course, they had to then get rid of parachutes, and people bought them because it was lovely fabric, and we were all, as youngsters, encouraged to make our underclothes
in the finest silk.
The very finest silk.
Excellent, okay. Thank you, Betty, that's good.
It was interesting how many pupils you taught in different places were very much involved with service life, because their fathers were very much in it. Therefore you had to know quite a bit. Also, it was quite an interesting time, but we were well looked after.